to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share a recent conversation with Skyler Clark-Hamel. Skyler is a graduate of Darden's full-time MBA program, and he's also currently a PhD student at Darden. I recently caught up with Skyler to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue a PhD, what he's been enjoying about the program so far, and much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Skyler Clark-Hamel. Skyler, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, how are you doing? Thanks so much for coming on the show. How's everything?
Things are good. Things are good. Things are great. I am enjoying the view out of the Darden PhD offices right now to see the construction that is coming up. We're going to have a couple new buildings here at Darden before we know it.
That's right. Give it a couple of years. We'll have housing for students at the Darden School. A lot of progress underway, a lot of construction. Not exactly the quietest moment at the Darden School, but lots to look forward to.
Yeah, it's exciting, but you're right. It is not the quietest, which is a bummer when you're doing your comprehensive exams, which is what I'm right in the middle of. Yesterday was day one, tomorrow's day two, but it's a big hurdle for a PhD in any program.
Well, good luck. I know that's an exciting time, probably a little stressful too. So appreciate you taking some time out for the podcast with everything you have going on. And we haven't yet featured conversation about the housing development on the podcast. It reminds me that we probably should do something about that. But Skyler, thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit more about you. Who are you and what's your background?
Sure. Well, I'm a New England boy, came down to the South from Maine, the rocky shores of Maine, where I fell in love with music at a really young age and decided that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And so when I turned 18, I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I put a band together and I started releasing records. And after about a year, I dropped out of Berklee, which I had been working for, the previous 6 years to get myself into that school. But it was a great opportunity to go out on tour and to see the country. And I played in 42 states and released 5 albums during that time. And by the time I was 25, I went, all right, I think I want something a little more stable. So I moved down to Nashville, Tennessee, where I started in the mailroom at a big talent agency, the William Morris Agency. I also stumbled into doing voiceovers. I ended up getting a job being the primary announcer for a movie channel in India that showed all Hollywood movies and American movies. So I did that for about 8 years. And then at the same time as all of that, I also re-enrolled at Berklee College of Music and was able to finish the degree via the online program. And so I was doing that while working in the mailroom and working my way up until I became an agent. And I helped develop the Christian music department, especially the Black Gospel division of that, moving Black Gospel artists from mainly playing churches into playing these really cool theaters and clubs around the country. And then, unfortunately, the pandemic hit. And there was no live music to book anymore. And that's when my sister, who was going to another business school, and she was just about to graduate, and she said, you know what? Why don't you consider going to business school? Learn some new skills, during this weird pandemic time. And if you want to go back into the music industry, you can. And that's when I started looking around and discovered Darden and absolutely fell in love. And it became my number one choice, and I got in. And then that's how I ended up in the MBA program, and then eventually the PhD program.
So our listeners have to know, tell us a little bit more about your band. Sounds like, y'all toured around a lot. You released multiple albums. Tell us about your band.
Yeah. Well, so the name was just my name, Skyler, Skyler, which at the time was brilliant because on iTunes, because this my main music career was between 2009 and 2016. And so all the music was on iTunes. People were still occasionally buying CDs, and a one name thing was so easy, Skyler. There was a emo band from New Jersey and a country singer from Alabama who were also on there named Skyler, but that was it, just three. And in the years since 2016, when I put out my last record, everything's moved to Spotify. And I think I counted 35 Skylers, people with just the name Skyler on there. So I have slowly faded into obscurity musically, which is why it was kind of fun coming to Darden and meeting Ed Freeman and having him ask if I could join his band. And now I get to play around Darden with some great faculty and staff and alumni and students, and we play around Charlottesville. It's a lot of fun.
What do you play in the band?
I play whatever is needed. The other night I was playing acoustic guitar because Ed Freeman's son was in town. But normally I play bass in the band. Sometimes I play drums if we don't have any drummers available for a gig. But I'm often singing some songs and helping to lead the band.
What's your favorite song to play with the student faculty band?
Oh man, we do a great cover of a cover. So uh, uh, "Act Naturally" by Buck Owens, and we do the Beatles version, so I can do my Ringo imitation.
Yeah, Ringo was on TV not so long ago, live from the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, talking about his love of country music, and of course they had Molly Tuttle and Rodney Crowell perform that song, and they kind of did an Everly Brothers a version of that, so a further variance on the cover. But it was great. It's a great song. It holds up no matter who does it.
It holds up no matter who does it. See, that's the key. That's the key. Great songs, they can stand the test of time and can stand multiple versions.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about what motivated you to pursue a PhD. Obviously, you've been to a lot of school at this point, undergrad and MBA. How did you decide you wanted to continue and pursue a PhD?
Yeah, it's funny. I think anybody who knew me was very, very surprised that I got into a PhD program or that I'd want to pursue a PhD, considering that when I went to college, first of all, it was a music school. Second of all, I dropped out after a year, and nobody thought I was ever going to go back and finish my degree. Not only did I go back and finish, I then ended up in an MBA program, and people thought, okay, that's a little strange. It's so different from the music industry. He's a performer. Why would he want to go into business? I didn't think it was that strange because I loved the music business. I also had a lot of family members who had gotten MBAs at wonderful universities over the years. And then when I was here after my summer internship, which I did out in Los Angeles, it was a great summer. I highly recommend if anybody, if you could choose where you want to go and do your internship, do what I did, which is getting an apartment 4 blocks from the beach in Santa Monica. It's a great way to figure out that the internship and the job that you're interning for is absolutely not what you want to do. Um, but it was an absolute blast getting to be there and really try different things. I was doing a brand management internship out there, and I discovered that selling soap wasn't that interesting to me, but I loved the research that went into it and the consumer research and figuring out how people thought. Um, and I knew I wasn't going to get a request to come back to the company, and I knew that I wouldn't say yes anyway. And so I got on a call with one of the folks in the Career Center here at Darden. And I said, "What do I do now? I don't know what I should do." And one of the career coaches said, "I've never recommended this to a Darden MBA before, but I think you should get your PhD." And at that time, I didn't know Darden had a PhD program. And so I said, "Okay, well, I'm never going to listen to this guy. He clearly doesn't know what he's talking about." And so I kept looking around for other things. And it just so happened that I met my, now wife. And she was getting her PhD in the history program at UVA. And my pickup line for her was, "Hey, what if I take you out to dinner and you convince me not to get a PhD?" And she said, "I can do this. I can convince you not to get a PhD." And it took about 3 or 4 months, but finally she broke down and went, "All right, let's say you get a PhD. you would be great if there was such thing as a PhD in business, but I don't think there is. And I went, you know what? Actually, I think there is a PhD in business, something like that. And I started looking it up, and I vaguely remembered an email that had come out a few months earlier that Darden was accepting PhD applications, and it just so happened to be in the strategy, ethics, and entrepreneurship group. And I went, oh man, I can see how all of this comes together with my favorite classes at Darden, which were the ethics and strategy and entrepreneurship classes. Uh, it was my favorite professors were the ones who were running the program, um, and I could see how my experience as a musician, as a uh, music business professional, with my MBA, how it all could work together and lead to this special thing. And so I came up with a proposal. I walked into Ed Freeman's office. I said, Ed, here's what I want to do. I want to study stakeholder theory with you. I want to look at the music industry. I'm interested in potentially how AI might interact with what's going on in creative fields, and I think there's a real stakeholder story here. And we talked for a few minutes, and he said, "All right, well, if you get into this program, you got to be in my band for the next 4 years." And I said, deal. And that's how I ended up here.
Very interesting question about AI and any kind of artistic creation. Like, as an artist, talk about all the deep fake Drake and all this, stuff that can be done with people's voices now and creating songs that are very, very much like a song that the person wrote. It may sound very much like the artist, but yet they had no hand in it. Feels like this is kind of really pushing it. I mean, you already have been through the whole thing of Napster and Spotify and who's getting paid, for this and who's actually making any money off their music at all. And then you introduce this sort of AI piece to it. It seems like it could be very, very complicated.
Oh, it's very complicated. And it's really funny looking at my proposal that I sent to Darden in December of 2022, which coincides with when ChatGPT was released. And that's kind of what really spurred this thought. I went, wow, if it can do this, I bet it can also create music. I bet it can do all these other things. And I laid out this scenario about Taylor Swift being in the studio and having writer's block, and suddenly she comes in the next day with 12 new songs written. A story about Daniel Ek at Spotify going, man, we haven't turned a profit yet. What's one of the things we could do? Oh, well, how about the like study music, the functional music as it's called? What if we replace all of the playlists that feature real, artists creating that music? What if we just replace it with stuff that we've created that we don't have to pay royalties on? And then the last part of that story was there's somebody in their bedroom who doesn't play any music at all, but they're tired of waiting for the new Taylor Swift record, and they just get an AI to instantaneously create something that sounds in her likeness, sounds like she's singing, sounds like she wrote it. And at the time, that felt like, oh, it's a few years off. But I think within 12 months, almost all of those things seemed to have come to pass. Now, I can't prove whether Taylor Swift has has used AI, but I did remember that then shortly after that, all of a sudden she released one of her albums that suddenly had like 30 songs on it. And I went, I wonder if she used anything to help her write all of that and be that prolific. So it's really interesting. And then from a personal standpoint, my voiceovers, I mentioned that I was was the announcer for a movie channel in India. I experienced this firsthand last summer, and I can't believe it took this long, but the movie channel came to me and said, we want to reduce your fee that we've been paying for the last 8 years. And we want to cut it in half, but still have you do the same amount of work. And I said, well, I don't think I really want to do that. What if I offer you like a 10% discount? And their response was, you know what? We're just going to replace your voice with an AI voice. Thank you very much. And that was it. So I've experienced this firsthand, this AI disruption.
Wow. I guess if you are in the voiceover world, you have to figure that that's always like, what's the other option that they have is just to have one of these sort of, I mean, you look, we have Zoom phones now at UVA, and you go through it, and there's about 20, 30 different options of voice messages of reading your actual voice. And it's not your voice, it's selected, but I'm sure they got to these voices somehow, and it sounds like all kinds of different people. And I mean, who owns what? How do you get paid for that? How do you? I mean, there's all kinds of questions here about ownership and copyright and who gets paid, and I mean that will go on for a while. It feels like.
Yeah, for sure.
So you obviously decided to stick around, Dart, to do your PhD. What was attractive to you about doing your PhD at Dart?
Well, I love, love Darden. I love Charlottesville. Uh, my fiance, well, I guess now by the time this comes out, she'll be my wife. I referred to her as my wife before. She'll be my wife next week. um, but she was telling me, Skyler, I've never seen somebody love their program so much. And the MBA program, I would just come back every single day and talk about all the amazing experiences that I had had with my classmates in the Darden classroom, with the professors. And each night when I would walk around North Grounds, walk around Darden, it would be dark, the lights would all be on, and I would be just filled with this feeling of just incredible joy and excitement. And I still feel that today every time I walk out at night and get to see, Saunders Hall and get to see the PepsiCo Forum and see the lawn. It's quite incredible. There's just a spirit here at Darden that is hard to describe. You have to feel it to know it. And I've never felt it anywhere else. So for me, that was a big part of it. It was just knowing how much I loved this place. And then the fact that Ed Freeman and Bobby Parmar are here, and Sarah Sarasvathy and Mingjer Chen and Mike Lennox. It's just an incredible list of people in this department. I could go on and on name checking all of them. You don't get that everywhere. And then beyond that, I feel like I have nearly unlimited access to professors here. So it's a very, very nurturing, positive, collegiate academic experience here.
I appreciate that. It sounds like the community of Darden filters into the PhD experience as well.
For sure.
So how's it going so far? I mean, what have you enjoyed about the PhD program?
Man, okay, so the PhD program, very different from the MBA program in a lot of ways. The MBA program, you have 70 people in just the classroom that you're in every single day. You get to know each and every one of them. You're with them during core from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., 4 days a week. You're recruiting together. You're doing social events together. In the PhD program, there were 6 of us in the SEE program taking classes. It's all just seminars. And so the classes are 3 hours long instead of an hour and a half. The reading that you had to do for the MBA program was really intense, because every single day you needed to prepare that night for the next day. You couldn't really get ahead very easily. In the PhD program, it's every seminar is roughly the equivalent of reading a book a week per seminar, and there's usually 4 seminars. Plus, you have to write anywhere from a 5 to 10 page paper every week for most of those classes. So it's a lot of reading, a lot of writing. It's not as chummy as the MBA program, and that's partly because there's only 6 of you instead of 70 people in a classroom. There is so much focus on the academic experience, which is the same in the MBA program. There's a heavy focus on the academics, but here, because there's so much reading to do, you can't really there's no learning teams. There's no, I'll read this part, you read that part, and then we'll teach each other. You really have to sit there on your own and grapple with the material. So it is a lot more isolated. But that is just the nature of a PhD program, and I wouldn't say is unique to Darden specifically. That is kind of anywhere.
Tell us about some of the things that you're reading. That sounds, I mean, if you like to read and you like to learn, that sounds great, but it does sound like a lot of reading. But what are some of the things that you're reading?
Oh, it's a lot of reading, and I would turn my computer if this was a video podcast, I would turn my computer to show you the stacks and stacks of books that I have all around here. I'm looking at John Rawls' Political Liberalism. I'm looking at Ed Freeman's Strategic Management and Stakeholder Approach. Um, I'm looking at Ed Hartman's Organizational Ethics and the Good Life. Joseph Schumpeter, Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy. Friedrich Hayek, The Road to Serfdom. Chester Barnard, The Functions of the Executive. So we have all of these books that we're reading that are classics in the field that have really built the strategy, ethics, and entrepreneurship fields. And then on top of that, we're also reading articles from academic journals, which can be really dense, can be really hard to read, can be boring. I would say, in general, academic writing is incredibly boring unless it's the thing that you study. And when you first join a PhD program, you're not studying anything yet. You don't know anything. And so it is really, really hard in the first year to get through papers that, where the title is, like, how much does industry matter really? And you go, I don't, I don't know. You tell me. But it's such dense language. Um, it really is learning a whole new language.
So here in this first year, you're kind of setting the table for what's to come. Is that a fair way, or like establishing kind of a baseline of knowledge? Like, how would you describe the sort of general orientation this first year?
Yeah, so in the first year, what we did was it was a lot of like foundations. So foundations of business ethics, foundations of entrepreneurship, foundations of strategy. Um, we did a philosophy of science course, so learning about how uh, philosophers really think about the social sciences, and think about knowledge creation. Is there a capital T truth? Is there an objective truth, an absolute truth, or is it more relativistic, or is it pluralistic? These types of things. When we got to our second year, there was started to be a little more of a specialization. Ed Freeman taught a class all about pragmatism and stakeholder theory. Ming-Jer Chen taught a class all about competitive dynamics, which is a field that he helped to pioneer. Bobby Parmar was really focused on moral psychology, and how do the psychologists instead of the philosophers really look at ethics in business. And then Rob Phillips did this great organizational ethics and strategy course, because he's really interested in how does business ethics, instead of being informed by political philosophy or informed by moral philosophy, how can it create its own homegrown kind of domain? So it starts to get more specialized in that second year. And then at the end of the second year, which is what I'm in the middle of right now, is the comprehensive exams, which are 2 days long, Tuesday and Thursday. So today's a Wednesday, so I have the day off to talk to you, which is great. But I'm halfway through that, and then you go on and you do your dissertation proposal, and you have to defend that and have the professors believe that where you're heading with your dissertation could really make an impact and a contribution to the field. And then the second half of the PhD, or second 2/3 of the PhD, depending on how long you take, is just writing and researching and writing and researching and presenting at conferences and all that.
How long do you expect it to take? What's your expectation?
So the program is officially 5 years. For the most part, if you ask for a sixth year, you can get 6 years. I'm trying to finish in 4 years because Ed is retiring at the end of my fourth year. I'm working with some really incredible people who are towards the end of their time here at Darden. And fortunately, I am productive enough that I can realistically get through this in 4 years. But it's definitely a fast timeline, and thank goodness I have enough support here at Darden that if I said, you know what, I need to take that 5th year, there's no question about it.
Well, I appreciate you just sharing the timeline for a PhD student because I'll be honest with you, when we restarted the PhD program, obviously a couple of years ago and announced it, I'm still learning about the program and always curious about what people are doing or how they're progressing through this program because I know a lot about the MBA experience at Darden. I don't know as much about the PhD experience. So thank you for walking us through that, Skylar. What's been the most surprising thing to you about the PhD program thus far?
Man, most surprising part about the PhD program, I would say, was just how close you get with the professors. Again, at other business schools, at other universities, from what I'm told, you're lucky if you can get a 30-minute meeting with your main advisor once a month. I am in Ed and Bobby's offices every single week. I'm over at Ed's house playing music every single week. It's very, very close. It's the way it was described to me when we first started. The director of the program at that time, Andy Wicks, he said, "We want this to be more of a apprenticeship model, where you are going to be working side by side with your advisors from day one, and you're going to build a really close bond." And having been, in undergrad programs, and even having been in the MBA program, I never got very close with any of the professors. I loved Ed and Bobby. I loved many of the other profs here, but I didn't get that close with them. With these guys, I'm having lunch with them multiple times a week, and we're, bouncing ideas off of each other, and we're writing these, long papers that take a year to write. And so that's definitely surprised me the most, is just how close I've gotten with the faculty members here.
I love that though. It's the intimacy of the program is really coming through. Just the access that you have, and I would also say, just I mean, you think about it, 4 or 5 years in this sort of like incubating environment where you're learning, you're working on your own ideas, you're working on a dissertation. I can see how you develop that very close personal connection. That makes a lot of sense. What advice would you have at this point, Skylar, for someone who's listening to this, maybe thinking about a PhD? What would you share with them?
The first thing I share is the same thing that everybody shares with prospective PhDs who have gotten a PhD before, which is, think again. Because most people who I talk to, the reason they want to get a PhD is either, oh, I just really like school. I don't really know what else I want to do with my life. Um, a very classic one at Darden specifically is the Darden classroom experience is so special. I want to do what those professors are doing. And you don't realize that A, not everywhere is like Darden. In fact, most places are not like Darden. Um, B, uh, Darden professors, what you see them doing is such a small part of the job. Being in front of the classroom is probably between 10 to 20% of the job. The rest of it is research. That is a huge, huge part of what they do. And that's at other schools, it might be even more. It might be even a larger percentage of the time they're doing research. And so you have to really be passionate about something that you want to learn every little detail about, but not just learn about, because there's a difference between a PhD program and a master's program. PhD program, it's all about knowledge creation and knowledge generation. And so you have to be passionate about something where you're going to spend every day waking up thinking about, oh, okay, I wonder if fill in the blank, and then design a research program around that, and then see if that leads anywhere. Um, Darden is also a very unique place because it's very well funded. So Darden professors and Darden PhD students don't have to worry that much about, NSF grants. We all know about how funding for academic research is starting to get squeezed. Very lucky at Darden that the funding is pretty robust. But at a lot of other schools, I was just with a professor at another school, and I told her, how much I get in research funding here as a PhD student. And she said, that's more than I get in a year as a full professor at this university. So it is just a really unique experience that you have here at Darden, which is one of the reasons to come here. And it's also something to remember about when you're thinking about, okay, happens after Darden, and what will my life look like if I decide to get that PhD? So yeah, I definitely say, think about all those things. Really have an idea of what you want to research, but be open to new ideas. Um, have professors, specific professors that you want to work with, whose work you know well and think you could collaborate with. Um, and if you're coming out of an MBA program, which Darden likes to hire or likes to bring into the PhD program, likes to bring in people who have business experience, who have MBAs, um, it's a lot of money you're leaving on the table by not going out and getting that post MBA salary for up to 6 years. And then you go and you get hopefully a business school professor, salary, or salary doing something else that, if you're lucky, will match what your post Darden MBA salary would have been. Um, so I would just say keep all of those things in mind. And if you're able to check off all those boxes and go, yep, this all looks great to me. I know the professor I want to work with. I know what I want to research. I know what questions I might want to have, but I'm open to other things. I know what my life afterwards will look like. You still want to do it? And then come on, let's do it.
I appreciate that. There's a lot to think through, right? This is no small undertaking, and it's a significant commitment of time, energy, as you mentioned, potential opportunity costs, right? What you could be doing otherwise if you weren't doing this. So I think you mentioned that it probably took a little while for you to come to the realization that you wanted to do this, maybe several months of reflection and conversation. And so that certainly makes an impression on me, Skylar. I'm curious, has your dissertation interest, you mentioned the sort of AI piece being really interesting to you. Has your dissertation idea or what you're thinking about writing about, has that evolved over the course of the couple years or so that you've been in the program? Has it changed?
Yeah, it's evolved a lot. It's always included stakeholders and stakeholder theory, and I knew that was interesting to me, and that's why I wanted to work with Ed Freeman and Bobby Parmar uh, as the leading thinkers in that field. Um, and I knew that I wanted to include my interests in the music industry somehow. Um, the AI part has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, where I decided, no, I'm not interested in studying AI directly, but I am interested in maybe just thinking about the effects of AI. One of the papers that we've written together, Ed Freeman, Rob Phillips, and I uh, asked the question of, is AI a stakeholder? AI has, become, there are AI agents now. People have AI as important parts of the team. Whole companies are laying off departments to replace them with AI. At what point, as AI becomes smarter and more capable of doing things on its own and able to interact with you and you treat it like a human, at what point do they become a stakeholder, if ever? So that's how AI has shown up in my work. But generally, the dissertation is starting to look more at competition. So stakeholder theory has largely been a sort of response to the strategic management focus on competition, competition, competition. In stakeholder theory, it's like, well, what about all these opportunities for collaboration? And over the last 40 years, there's been so much great work on that. And now what I'm looking at is, well, what is the role of competition in stakeholder theory, in stakeholder relationships? Uh, you know, yes, your stakeholders are your employees and your customers and the community around you and the suppliers and the people with the money. Um, but what about like how you get their attention and keep it and maintain those relationships um, in competition with other firms? Because sometimes, like employees Brett, you can only work for one business school at a time. You know, firms will compete for employees with each other. They obviously compete for consumers and for their dollars. Suppliers, one of the things I found really interesting is in some fields, there might be a lot of consumer facing businesses, but there's only a couple B2B suppliers that supply all the things that those companies need. And at a certain point, that those suppliers have limited bandwidth, and so you want to have the best relationship with that supplier, so that if you need something, they give you what you need quickly, rather than prioritizing someone else. So these are the things that I've become interested in, in this idea of competing for stakeholders.
Really interesting. AI as a stakeholder. I have so many questions about how do you kind of involve them in the decision, or how do you think about it in the context of the decision, or sort of weigh it as you might other stake? I mean, because you can hear directly from other stakeholders about how they think or feel, or it's harder to do that for something that is well, it's not a person exactly, not a human. It's how do you account for how it might be affected by the decision? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, well, and the way Ed, Rob, and I have gone around answering this question and thinking about it is there's also been a debate over, well, what about the natural environment? Is the natural environment a stakeholder? What about non-human animals? Aren't they stakeholders? If the definition of stakeholder is uh, any group or individual that can affect or is affected by an organization in pursuit of its goals, well, that could be almost anything. And so the way we've gone about trying to answer this question is by uh, you know, creating conditions that an entity needs to meet, minimum conditions in order to be considered a stakeholder, and then thinking about, well, there's probably different levels of stakeholders. There are probably primary stakeholders and secondary stakeholders, and then tertiary stakeholders. And what does that mean? How uh, do these different conditions and the level of stakeholder ness impact the decisions that are made by firms and how they should think about their stakeholders and include them?
That's super interesting. I can imagine how neat it must be to be able to have these conversations like over lunch, or just hanging out with Ed and Bobby and just thinking through all of this. That's fascinating. What would you want folks to know about Darden? Obviously, you spent a lot of time in Charlottesville and at the Darden School. What would you want prospective student listeners? Obviously, we've got a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are looking at our MBA program, but what would you want them to know about Darden generally?
Yeah, I would say Darden is a really special place where you're going to work really hard, um, but also have a lot of fun. It is one of the most nurturing environments I've ever been in. And I can speak to both the MBA experience and the PhD experience here, where the beginning is really, really hard. Compared to a lot of other business schools, Darden is pretty notorious for being the homework school. They like to give a lot of homework to their students, and so it's a lot of work. But it ends up creating a lot of camaraderie between the students. And when I graduated, I felt like I had 350 friends that I was graduating with, 350 people who I could call up after the program was done to say, "Hey, I'm in DC, I'm in Chicago, I'm in Boston, I'm in Dallas. Let's get together. Let's hang out." In fact, I was just in DC at one of my former classmates, um, not baby shower, 1 year first birthday party for their baby, and there were all of these other classmates who showed up for the birthday party, who I wasn't particularly close with during the program, but we recognized each other, and it was the most natural feeling of just getting together and chatting and having a good time. And that's something that I don't think you get everywhere. It is a great thing about MBA experiences generally. You tend to get to, know your cohort and you have these connections. But there's something about Darden not having an international airport nearby, so people aren't jet setting on the weekends. People stay in Charlottesville on the weekends. which is pretty unique for a lot of PhD programs or MBA programs. Um, so I would just tell people, come to Charlottesville, settle in. You're going to have a great place to study. Some great people are going to become good friends of yours, and there's a lot of really good food here. So you might gain a few pounds at Darden as well.
Yeah, there's so many wonderful places to eat. A lot of great places to see live music. If you're also a fan of that, big music scene, could be in
Great.
the student faculty band, but I mean, wineries, breweries, all of these kinds of things. Beautiful nature. Yeah, lot to be said for just coming to Charlottesville and settling in. I appreciate that, Skylar. So, a last question for you: what are you looking forward to in the coming months?
In the coming months, well, I'm looking forward to tomorrow being done with comprehensive exams. That's a big hurdle, as I described before. But one of the things I haven't shared that I'm looking forward to is a month from now, I am heading to Copenhagen for the Academy of Management Conference. It's the annual conference. There are, I think, something like 15,000 people registered for the conference there. And I had multiple presentations accepted at the conference, which I'm very excited about. One of the papers was shortlisted, was designated as a best paper for the conference, which means it's in the top 10% of papers that we presented, which is very exciting and flattering. I'm also going to be presenting at the Society for Business Ethics annual conference in Copenhagen. Then I go from there to the stakeholder school summer seminar in Finland, where I'm going to be working with 30 of the best and brightest young stakeholder theorists from around the world, which is really cool. And then I head to Munich from there to work with another colleague of mine, where we are working on a paper that brings together stakeholder theory and elements of music theory, which is really fun. Yeah, so there's a lot of really exciting things happening this summer, and none of this would have happened. I wouldn't be doing any of this if it weren't for getting into the PhD program and having such a great time here.
I imagine some of our listeners are pretty envious of your itinerary. After watching a couple seasons of The Bear, I now really want to go to Copenhagen. Just want to walk around, eat some baked goods. I don't even need to work at a restaurant there, although that is also part of the experience. It seems incredible. So you're gonna have a great summer. Skylar, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been so much fun catching up with you and hearing more of your story. And thank you for all the insights about the PhD program. This is it's a program that's just been restarted within the past few years here at Darden, and it's been great to have you here and give some real insight about what you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it.
And that was my conversation with Skyler Clark-Hamel, a graduate of Darden's full-time MBA program and a current PhD student here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.